practices, testing Agile's flexibility. We are joined by Janani, a distinguished product owner who brings a wealth of experience in navigating Agile's principles across various industries. She will tell us a little bit more about her background in a few minutes. If you have any questions, please leave them on the chat, or you can also raise your hand and we will take them. My name is Gabi. I'm the host. We have also Edgar here, which is always our moderator. And yes, so thanks again for being here. We can get started. Edgar, if you have something.
Sure, Gabby, thank you. And
Yeah.
thank you, Janine, for joining us today. We are, excited to know more about your background and to know more about your experience working with Agile and how you have been, ha having this excellent opportunity to test it across many industries. So that definitely is very exciting. Um, we would like to start by knowing a bit more about yourself, and if you can tell us more about your background, that would be excellent. Once again, thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Edgar and Gabriela. Thanks for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. This is Janani Pratap Kumar. I'm working as a senior product owner at a timeshare company under travel and hospitality domain. So I'm working as a senior product owner, and in my current company, we are currently transitioning from waterfall to agile. And I'm doing my roles and responsibilities here is interacting with the developers and then the stakeholders, conducting ceremonies like sprint planning, grooming, demos, retrospective. So it's basically, we are currently project focused, but we are on the path of achieving into a product focused team. And here I'm into the data engineering side. So basically, it's the integration between the two databases in order to, come up with this Databricks, in order to use the Databricks, which is part of the project, long time project, I would say, we are trying to achieve. So here, currently, we are using AHA and then Azure DevOps, ADO, in order to manage the tasks. So before working with this company, I have worked at a company with respect to travel and transportation organization under a team where we support notification channels like email, SMS, voice, push, in order to provide the customers the status of their shipment. There it was completely a scaled agile framework where we used to have this PI planning, which used to happen every 2 months once. We used to plan all the user stories based on the requirements way ahead of time. We used to plan for 5 sprints. There, the tool used was version 1 in order to manage the tasks. All the epics are broken down into features and then into user stories, which is currently being done as well, but in AHA, but there it was version 1. And before working there, I worked at for an automotive client, a leading automotive client for a few months. So there it was to manage a digital side of application. Like I used to manage like 6 different applications. And it was gathering the detailed requirements in the form of BRDs and then working in the content management system, the AEM, and how we are going to establish any new features onto the site or any new images or articles timely onto the site was done was done using AEM, and I was responsible for tracking that timely and then making sure that every article, videos, or Bluetooth, any application regarding Bluetooth or any manuals regarding Bluetooth are uploaded onto the website. So it was to manage 6 different websites, and it was again kind of a Kanban agile methodology we used, not completely agile, but it was kind of a Kanban approach where we used that. And the tool that I used there was Jira. So this is my high-level overview about my experiences so far. So to go into more detailing about the experiences across the industries, first, if I have to start from the automotive client, where it was 2 vehicles, and where I used to manage 6 different applications, including their Bluetooth applications. So there was like new features brought up onto the site, like if the customers want to view their financial information, that was kind of a feature which was brought up, for an example. And it was completely from the headquarters. We used to receive the requirements in the form of BRD, and then I used to convert that into a functional requirement document. And further than that, conduct all the brainstorming sessions with the stakeholders, and then including the developers, architects, and then groom that into user stories, and make sure that those user stories are delivered timely. And I also made sure to do the UAT testing in stage and production, provide a sign off before it gets launched into production. So first UAT testing was done in stage, and then it was done in production as well. So what new I have learned there was the AEM. So in the organization, I have no prior experience of AEM. So it was there. I learned about AEM. I used to write the articles, coordinating with my manager, and deploy it on the site. All the images, videos with respect to the vehicle launch, all are uploaded onto the site. And Bluetooth application was maintained separately, which was kind of quarterly maintenance. So every 3 months once, the technology, whenever the technology gets upgraded, there was the stakeholder calls are conducted, and I used to lead that call, explaining the developers during that stakeholder calls what we are expecting out of this launch, what we are going to achieve out of this launch. So that was interacted along with stakeholders, and all the related documents or related images that we have to get from the stakeholders are all gotten during that stakeholders call. So there was this interaction with the design partners as well. So we made sure that the vehicle has to be with this dimensions, it should not go beyond that. So all the design criterias are to be met. So it was interaction with design partners, and then everything was brought up together, and then it was provided to the developers. From there, they will proceed with deployment. So that was part of what I did at my automotive client organization. And yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, Janine. I think you mentioned some very interesting points here, and perhaps we can cover those in a bit more detail, right? The first one I would say is you were managing 5 or 6 different applications or products at the same time. So how's that like? I mean, what does that feel like? What were like your key strategies to be able to manage all of those at the same time and still coming up with the results at the expected time? What can you tell us about it? How was your experience?
Yes. So managing 6 different application was initially challenging, because that was kind of new experience that I got from there. Because the Bluetooth applications, it was 2 vehicles, so each one has 1 websites, right? So the Bluetooth also has 2 webs, each one has one, so it was 2, and it was kind of quarterly maintenance, which was maintained in a different way. Like we used to have these stakeholder calls for every quarter, and based on that, the timeline was provided to us, and the launch was tracked. Apart from that, we have these 4 applications maintained, 2 for each vehicle was maintained. So it's not part of quarterly, so it's kind of a regular work that I do there. So every now and then, whenever there was any requirement provided, so I made sure that the requirement was detailed. So it was drafted out. Sometimes the details are not provided, but it's as a product owner, it's the duty of the product owner to ask the right questions. Why we are doing it, what is the purpose, what is the benefit, what value it is going to produce, and how the customers are going to be benefited out of this launch. So all that is tracked and drafted as part of the requirement. And then that's kind of a business aspect, trying to understand what exactly is the need of this requirement, what goal has to be achieved, and then what part of work the developers are supposed to be doing. So we know that there is kind of development and then there is QA analyst to perform the testing. But apart from that, I made sure that I do the UAT in stage and production and provide a sign off and get a sign off from the stakeholders as well. So it was a different experience because it was into the digital application maintenance. So I used to conduct the brainstorming sessions with the stakeholders, made sure that my understanding is aligned with the stakeholders' understanding as well. And it was again communicated back to the developers. And we all made sure that everyone's understanding is the same and all of us are aligned with what has to be achieved as part of the requirement. So that's how it was tracked. So it was a kind of a step-by-step process, gathering the requirement, conducting the brainstorming session, interacting with the developers, and then made sure everyone is aligned on the same page, and then proceed with design, development, testing, and production.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you also mentioned something that I think it's crucial when we are shipping products, and that is that we need to take into account how this particular change or this particular product will benefit the customer, right?
Right.
And I believe you were also mentioning about these calls that you had with the stakeholders. So I guess you got that alignment from there. But can you tell us a bit more about how do you determine this value for the customers, and how could you say or what was like your main criteria to say this is actually valuable or not for them, and how that impacts the product later?
Yes. So there was a site where we used to track all the customer feedbacks. So it's kind of closely interacting with the customers as well. And I used to manage that site, which was called as iPerceptions, where I used to track all the customer feedbacks, and those feedbacks where it was repetitive. If the customer says, okay, this feature is bothering the making use of the customers, or if this feature, if we have something like this in order to access the website more efficiently, and which I feel that it's very kind of a repetitive comments from all the customers, I used to track that in a separate spreadsheet. Every week it was done. Every Mondays, I used to send all the high feedbacks provided by the high important feedbacks provided by the customers, and I used to send that to my manager, and whatever we can improve based on the customer needs, it was discussed with the managers, and then it was further taken down. Sometimes requests are not received by the stakeholders, but sometimes it was the initiative of us to benefit the needs of the customers. So I would say the financing information was brought up into the sites where the customers can go into the site and then access their finance information. Okay, this much amount of lease is pending for that particular customers. All that financial details they can view. That was brought up based on the customer feedback. It's just one of the examples. So that's how we improved the website, and then we were receiving all the positive feedbacks as well. And sometimes when the network goes down, we made sure that we display that this is going to last. This network drop down or issue is going to last for a certain amount of time, maybe like 6 hours or 24 hours. So all that was communicated to the customers. So this was brought up based on the feedback. So I have worked very closely. So that's when I say we need to fulfill the needs of the customer. There was this separate maintenance of website for just to track the customer feedbacks, which was helpful to improve our web operations as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious about the way that you were capturing this feedback, because if I understand, or rather as I understand, there are various touch points that the user might have, right, across the life cycle of the product, and also where they are in the purchasing cycle, for example. So do you identify any particular touch points that were more critical to improve the product at any stage? Could you tell us more about that?
Yes. So definitely, so how we are going to benefit is by the customer feedbacks, like I said, but there are like critical critical phases as well when we receive the requirements. For example, the requirement will be kind of 1 or 2 lines of description. So in that case, it's difficult to explain that to developers, because the product owner's responsibility is provide the detailed requirements and targets to the developer so that we get the correct output. So with the help of one-line requirements, it was difficult and challenging. But then if it was that way, then it's the responsibility of product owners to gather the more detailed and draft more detailed requirements. So whenever there was kind of insufficient information provided, then it was the responsibility of me to, reach back to the requesters. And then as much as possible, I'll try to gather all the detailed requirements, what we are trying to achieve and what exactly is expected. If they have any mock-ups to share with us, or if it's an existing requirement that they want to enhance, or if it's a new requirement, all those basic touch points I will focus on. So I'll see if it's an enhancement. Then we have already the product existing, so how we are going to enhance. But if it's a completely new request, then it has to be completely a new discussion, right? So any new feature, if they want us to launch it into production and they are expecting for an early time frame, then it's the responsibility of me to going back to the stakeholders, get what is required, and then again interacting with the developers. So those are the basic touch points, whether this is a legacy or whether they want it as a new product launch, and when they want, and if it's very critical for the team and the organization to launch it at a timely manner, then we just discuss about what we can push back on, because it also depends on the capacity of the team. So if the low priority items can be pushed back and this can be accommodated because it's going to impact the team and organization, then yes, that's considered. So all that are the key points that I would suggest to look at it in order to go further. Yeah.
Right. And when you are mentioning about these pushback items, right? I guess there's always this time where we need to have like these difficult conversations. So in your mind, what would be the best way to tackle this kind of conversations, and what would be the most convincing points so we actually manage to push back some items that might not be, like the top priority? So what do you think? What tips can you give us there?
Sure. So when I worked in my second company, which was under travel and transportation, I can provide some examples there. So there we used to support notification channels. Basically, it's to provide the status of shipment to the customers, whether the shipment is delivered or is it in transit state, kind of high level this was. We used to support multiple different clients as well. It was not client specific, like we used to support requests from retail, we used to support requests from healthcare. So because it was kind of notification channel supporting team. So when I have experienced receiving some critical requests, which was with a limited time frame. So the first thing is we need to look at what all priorities we have in the roadmap. So we have the roadmap. So all the requests are added up in the roadmap. And then there are some requests which are already prioritized, but if we have to fit this new important one into it, then we need to look at what other requests can be pushed back, or we can even split this into phases. So basically, we need to satisfy the needs of the stakeholders, right? So that's also the key priority. So how we are going to satisfy, though it's late, we have to look at the bandwidth of the resource, if we have the enough bandwidth to accommodate this request. If not, then we have to see how we can accommodate it without impacting other requirements. One such example I would give is one of the requests where we couldn't push back on other requirements in the backlog because all of them were expected on a particular time frame. For example, if June was the MTP, then we agreed that we are going to deliver all those 5 requirements in June, and this just came in. So how we satisfied was this requirement could be split up into phases. So what was suggested was maybe we can split up into phases, like user stories could be like 8 points allocated, and then there was this particular feature. The features are split up, and then I made sure that I provided all the details that we have so many requests, all are for on track for delivery in June, but we can accommodate this particular requirement as well, but we will be completing kind of a in phases. First phase will be kind of a temporary fix where we are satisfying the need of the stakeholders, but it's going to be a short-term goal or approach. The permanent or the detailed or whatever they are expecting as part of the requirement is going to be done as a long-term approach. So that's how this was tackled. So we are satisfying the need of the stakeholder, and that's getting accommodated. And the long-term approach, when it is into production or launch, till then we will be using the short-term approach. So that's how we came up with this idea. So that's one of the ways that I could think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I think it's pretty smart because, as you mentioned, you get to satisfy this main need, right? And later you can start building up the other pieces that might not be that that are part of the priority, but might not be like urgent to keep running, so to speak. I guess that's the reasoning a little bit behind it. And you also mentioned about this resource bandwidth. So what can you tell us about it? Because sometimes it's a bit difficult to track how much that bandwidth is actually, being used, being utilized but at the same time, it's not like we have infinite resources and then we can just keep throwing requirements at them, right? So what's for you the best strategy to interact with, in this case, with the developers, and how is this interaction better handled from your perspective?
Yes. So though the role of capacity planning is part of Scrum Master's role, but still the product owner is also highly involved in capacity planning of the team, because all the requirements are known to the product owners, and the complexity as well. When they conduct the refinement sessions, the complexity is known as well. So what I used to do, what I have been doing so far is, so whenever I receive any request, for the first thing is conducting sessions with the stakeholders and gathering all the requirements, conducting refinement sessions with the developers where I discuss with the developers how we can break down the requirement, how we can break down the epic into a feature and then feature into a user story. So once the user stories are broken down, so the story point estimation is done. So we follow Fibonacci series. I think across previously also in my previous organization also it was Fibonacci series. I think across every organization they follow Fibonacci series, I believe. So based on that, the story point is estimated. Like if it's a user story with 1 point, which means it's assumed that it's 1 day worth of effort. And if it's like every 2 weeks is considered to be 1 sprint, but total 10 points is not allocated. Like for example, each day is calculated with 1 point. So for 2 weeks, it's going to be 10 points for a resource, but we should not be providing 10 points. We have to give some bandwidth because the resource might take some unplanned leaves or sick leave. So always should plan for 80% of capacity. So we have to give some buffer there. So in case of some unexpected plan change, then this task cannot get completed. So always should plan for 8 points, or it can be like 6 to 8 points, I would say. 6 points is the maximum to be provided because they can work on the production issue. They can take part in the deployment activities. All that is considered as part of planning. So that's how the capacity of a resource in a team should be calculated. So when a maximum should be 6 points. So if a team has 5 resources, it should be 30 points for the team. It's considered as planned. So target is 30, but how much we are planning depends. So out of 6, if the resource is going on to work on a production issue, then we have to reduce accordingly. So that's how the target and planned capacity of the team is calculated. And regarding the requirements or user story assignment to a resource, it depends on how complex and who can handle it. Sometimes the user story can accommodate both development and QA together, but sometimes development takes longer than QA, so it has to be split. So user stories can be split, or the user stories can span for multiple sprints. It can be kind of a spike story. So in that way, if it's a very huge or complex requirement where we won't be able to predict the capacity or the estimation, then it has to be considered as spike, and that's how the prioritization is done.
Mhm. Okay. Okay.
I have a quick question here.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Please
so
go ahead.
how do you handle challenges such as the stakeholders comes to you with a new requirement or a new feature that they want to implement, and they have this expectation in time or the way that it's going to be delivered. And then when you come to your team, developers and QA on the requirement sessions, they have a complete different perspective of the feature. And maybe they said, this is not going to take 2 weeks as the client is expecting, it's going to take 4 weeks. Or any challenges like between the expectation of the client and the actual perspectives or thoughts of the development team.
Yes, yeah, that's a good question. So, so I mean, there were situations, I mean, it's very common as well, because it always happens, because the stakeholders won't know the complexity because they talk in terms of business
Right.
aspects, right? And developers know the complexity because they are going to be the one who is going to, dive deep and into the requirement, and then they are going to get it developed into a product. So regarding complexity, so the first thing when I conduct the refinement sessions, the developers will convey what issues or impediments or what blockage they have, so that that's considered as a refinement note. I add all that as part of the user story. All that is added in the discussion comments. So what they need and what is blocking them, all that is noted down. And if this is something which I have to get those answers from the stakeholders, then I go back to the stakeholders, make sure that they are providing me with these information in order for the developers to proceed more. But that's one situation, to get all the answers from the stakeholders before we get into development. That's one thing. The other thing is the stakeholders will not be able to provide those details. It's something which technical team has to discuss with architect and come back. And maybe the complexity is more than expected, and they cannot complete in like 2 weeks of time. They need like extra time. So there we have to maintain that transparency with the stakeholders too. So it's fair enough for the developers to provide or to share that complexity of the user stories that they are going to work in. So what I will do is I have to provide the estimation back to stakeholders that this is the requirement and this is what has been discussed with the developers. So developers are providing these details that this is not a kind of a for example, like 8-point worth of effort, it's going to take like 16 points and it's going to span for multiple sprints because of these complexity issues for this requirement. So we are in need of setting up a new environment, which takes like kind of 1 week of time. And then testing is going to take another 1 week of time, and post-production validation is going to take some time. So all these are actually detailed by me, so that we have to maintain the transparency with the stakeholders, make them understand that this is very complex and why it's complex. The detailing should be provided. It's not just, I cannot go and say it's a complex requirement, so developers need time. What is making it complex? The detailing should be provided to the stakeholders, and that way we can request a time frame, additional time frame. Instead of 2 weeks, I think 2 more additional weeks is required. So that's how I would tackle.
Thank you for that. Heidi has a question, a comment. This is a very helpful session. How do you address non-functional requirements? When do you get visibility on this, and how we should prioritize the same?
So non-functional requirements. So basically, so whenever any requirement is provided to us, the non-functional requirement is a terminology. I think it's used in non-agile framework. So for any requirement for that in case, I would say we have to always have that transparency in discussing the details. So, and that's also responsible for us to get the quality deliverable, because quality is the key for the customers. So I think it's always involving the architect and the lead developers and also the stakeholders in the calls, and get the help of the product owner to, lead that call. And even product managers play a very crucial role in providing us, facilitating those meetings with the stakeholders. And that way we can draft the non-functional requirements and then assign that, and then that has to be again groomed up with the team. So the prioritization is done based on gathering the details from the stakeholders and how we should be proceeding, because developers also could give their inputs, or there could be a way with which it has to be proceeded. Stakeholders will have a concept in their mind that this can be proceeded this way, but we can achieve it in a more simpler or efficient way. That suggestion can be provided by the developers, and which we can take it back to the stakeholders and let them know we are going to proceed it in this way. And that could be drafted. And I think that's the way we can achieve it. Hope I answered your question, Hari.
Yep. Thank you very much, Janani. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. So I'm also curious, since you mentioned about different ways to adopt Agile, right, in these different companies.
Right.
And as far as my experience tells me, it's very difficult trying to follow like a canonical Agile way. In every company is like different. But in your experience, what has worked best? How do you feel about these differences across the implementations of Agile? How flexible can it really be before it starts, or rather stops being functional?
Yeah, so that's a great question too, because Agile framework, I think it's been changing with each organization. So the first organization that I worked for was kind of a Kanban approach. I used to write the description, all the details, track it using Jira. So and there were like change requests added as well, like PCRs, product change request was also raised, which was taken into account based on the customer feedback. So PCRs were also included, and then new requirements were also broken from features into the user stories. That was also included. But if they are giving us the target of 3 months, though we have the sprint for every 2 months, but the target is like after 3 months, after a quarter, then I think the stories are spanning for multiple sprints, kind of a Kanban approach, I would say. We used to have Scrum calls every day. But since it was Kanban, I think at that time I didn't have the retrospective or demos, but instead of demo, I used to do this UAT testing in stage and production. They used to push all the products into the UAT environment. So I used to validate and provide my status in the form of a spreadsheet for all the features that are to be launched into production, and then provide that back. That these are all good to go. So kind of sign off was provided. So basically, the acceptance criteria has to be met. So that's part of Agile. And that's when the story is called definition of done. The story is complete, that's the DOD. So that was then in my second organization, I worked into a completely scaled Agile framework where it was different, completely different from what I used to do. So we used to have PI planning, which happens every 2 months once, where we used to plan all the user stories or requirements way ahead of time. So we used to have this 5 sprints where the user stories for any new requirements are planned for four sprints, first 4 sprints. And the 5th sprint was allocated just for innovation. If the developers are going to come with any innovation, then we used to allocate the 5th sprint only for innovation, and 4 sprints are for user stories. So that was the scaled Agile framework. And PI planning, all the new requirements are discussed during the PI planning, where all the cross-functional teams participate, all the MDs, VPs used to participate, and product owners should present the requirements that the team will be working upon. And even the dashboard of the team, the target and planned capacity, and what all user stories we have added, all that was maintained in the version 1 tool, and we used to display that to all the stakeholders. So, that's how it was planned. So it was scaled Agile framework, completely different. And here, again, it's an Agile framework we are following. We're transitioning from waterfall to Agile, and we are focusing more towards the product-focused teams or for product-focused organization. So I'm into the data engineering side currently. It's a kind of a technical team where the requests are received from the marketing team. So we have the stakeholders from marketing team. So they provide requests related to databases, how we are going to integrate 2 different databases, and how we are going to efficiently use Databricks in future. So that's the goal of what we are planning to achieve in future. So whenever the request comes, and that is actually prioritized during the bi-weekly meetings. So if we have a dashboard set up, so every bi-weekly meetings, whatever requests are discussed, that is taken into the backlog of our team, and based on the priority, I used to take it up back with the developers, and then groom that, conduct refinement sessions, sprint planning, grooming sessions with the team, plan the capacity of the team, and the dashboard is also set up. So I manage the dashboard, make sure that the team is working progressively and making sure that we are able to achieve the time frame. And also the demos are conducted. So in the demo, we can actually see what developers have worked, even though it's kind of a technical, but still we can see what is actually developed by the developers. And as part of demo, they will be virtually able to see what has been achieved. That's how sign-off is provided, whether they have met the acceptance criteria. If so, the sign-off is provided that way. So though the responsibilities are same for a product owner, but I feel the role is going to be different with each organization. An Agile framework is also different. Some organization will follow the Agile Kanban approach. Some will follow the scaled Agile approach. So it differs, but the responsibilities are going to be very, very similar.
I have a question regarding this same topic. How did you adapt your approach to the product owner role when you are transitioning between industries? With all the experiences that you have had, do you bring some strategies that you have learned in other industries to the current one, regardless of how the current industry is applying Agile methodology?
Yes. So strategies means I would call it as like the transparency is very important. You have to be transparent with the developers and also with the stakeholders. So not all the requirements are going to be an enhancement. The enhancements are pretty easy for the developers to quickly get it done. But for any new requirements, I think it's the responsibility of the product owners to provide proper requirements to the developers so that we can get the expected output or the goals. That's the objective. I think strategies means I would call it as transparency and ask the right questions, and you have to ask questions. So it's why we are doing it, what we are going to achieve, what benefit, what purpose it's going to fulfill, and what is the ultimate goal of getting this product into launch. So we always, the product owner should ask right questions. So basically, we need to speak on behalf of everyone in the team, be it the developers, on behalf of the achievement of what has to be, achieved as part of the product. So ask the right questions, come up front, and you have to always ask the right questions. Having a great leadership skills is also really important to get anything achieved from the role of performing the role of product owner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I have two more questions, right? One would be when you identify a need from the developer team, for example, let's say that, as you mentioned, maybe, we need a new environment, or we need credentials for a database, or, it can be many things. And in order for the team as a whole to function, sometimes I feel that some part of the work that we need to do when we are at these leadership positions is to clear the path for them, like going and trying to get whatever they need, so the team keeps moving, right? But I would like to see what's your stance there. What's your opinion, and how do you handle that normally?
Yes. So basically, to fulfill the needs of the developers, it's the responsibility of me to going back and get what they request for. For example, if the developers need, for example, there's this design partners also involved in many organizations, right? So if they need a UI UX mockup, which will be helpful for them to proceed with developing the design of the product, then, and it's not available on time, if in case, then it's the responsibility of me to going back, interacting with the design partners, making sure that the developers need this particular design in order to proceed further. So that's the step I would take. So interacting with design, or whether they are sometimes testing the product in the servers. Sometimes there is like L2, L3 servers maintained, and they are usually, if they are using L3 to test in order to get a sign off, or for demos, if they are using L3 in order to show their demo, demo results are shown using the L3 results. And if it's a blocker, if L3 for some reason, if it's not running appropriately because many teams are using, some network down issue is going on, then what is the other way where the developers can use the server in order to do the testing? How we can provide sign off? L3 issue shouldn't stop them from getting a sign off for this product and moving that into production, right? So what is the solution? So from my end, I will reach out to the architects, and then I'll make sure if they can use any other environment. Like if L3 is not working, can I go with L2, or is it possible to use another server in that case, and whether they can make a temporary check there until the L3 is down. So I'll make sure to come up with a solution. How we are going to come up with solution is what matters. We need to reach out to the particular architect, or reach out to the networking team, how we are going to come up with this output, how we can resolve. So I make sure that developers are not waiting on me. Make sure that they are required with what they need in order to proceed further. So I shouldn't be a blocker for them. So I am very particular on that. That's how I'll try to find out a solution. So basically, that's the role of a product owner. We need to be a decision maker and also provide solutions to the developers. So that's how I would resolve.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Let me congratulate you on your proactive approach, because that really, like, helps a lot, and I'm sure that's key to achieve great results. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
definitely. And finally, one more question. I think it might be one of the most complex ones, and that has to do with, for example, this change that you guys are experiencing from, like moving from waterfall to agile, or any other kind of change that sometimes needs to happen precisely behind this agile methodology, right?
Yeah.
So what I see is that, or what I feel is that sometimes people are not open to change, and it's difficult, even from our own nature. If we are used to something and that's like our comfort zone, etc. So in your experience, how does that change management work in terms of people what's the best method that you have found to help them transition into these new methodologies, roles, or in general, the way they perform their work, right?
Correct. Agree. Because it's not easy to transition from waterfall to agile, because we have been working in the waterfall model for quite a long time, and suddenly if we are going to transition, it's going to be challenging for everyone. But as a team, we need to lift each other up, and then we have to lift each other up, and we have to come up with some solution in achieving this faster. So planning should be done. I think it's not going to happen in a day. It's going to take some time, but until then, I think proper planning will definitely make the transition happen very quickly. So it's be it a scrum master, be it a product manager, and be it a product owner. I think um, planning is very important, and also understand the agile framework. Maybe take a training and understand the role of each role. We need to have that clarity. Okay, the role of product owner is this, the developers role of developer is this. So kind of understanding the role is very important. And it's going to happen slowly, but how if we want to make it happen very quickly, then it's uh, pre-planning is very important. I think to me, I would say start with some dashboard setting up for the team. For example, if it was completely waterfall and we are transitioning to agile, we need to have that dashboard set up. How much of stories are completed by the developers in a team? How much velocity we have achieved? Whether we were able to close all the stories, just not closing, but whether the demo went well, are we carrying over the stories? How much percentage was completed? All that should be tracked using a dashboard. I think that's the first step. And then we have to start having this retrospective. That will definitely help in grooming the team. So retrospectives will not only help the product owners to provide feedback of how the sprint went, but it's kind of getting the feedback from the developers as well. It's for the developers, the QA analysts, right? So they can provide their honest feedbacks. That's why we have this retrospective, and based on that, how we can improve as a team. So that should be kind of an action item to be taken from product owners. That's what I've been doing. So I've been conducting the retrospective. So based on the retrospective feedbacks, I'm taking that. I'm taking the action item that has to be taken. So that's the second thing. And demo is very important, because be it a business request or be it a technical request, demo is really important. And it's not just demo of a particular developer who is presenting, but all of us should know what they have worked. So each one has to show demo, and everyone should participate, ask questions. So everyone has the clarity of what was done as part of the user story, whether it has met the acceptance criteria or not. And if they feel that estimation should be more, then I think we have to be flexible, and we have to provide the estimation appropriately. And it has to be agreed with everyone in the team. It's not just a particular developer is giving an estimation of a user story as kind of 5 points, but others feel that it could be like 8, even more higher or even lesser. I shouldn't be adding that user story because this particular developer is going to work. So I will add only 5. No, it shouldn't be. It has to be agreed upon everyone, but it's agreeable only when I explain the appropriate user story correctly and get the feedback. So everyone in the team should be aware about every request. So that if one is facing issue, the other one can, help and provide solutions. So overall, it has to be lifting up the team and growing along with the team. I think in that way we can achieve this transition very quickly and faster. Yeah.
Smoothly, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think our time's up, unfortunately, but I really want to appreciate all your time, your insights, and your energy, Nani. I think we had a great session today, and we learned a lot. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And yeah, I just want to appreciate that. To thank you. I'm not sure, Gav, if you have any other comments or you,
No,
Janini,
just
before we conclude. Mhm.
yeah, no, thank you, Janani. This has been great, very insightful. I can see you're a great professional, very transparent, which is something you aim for within your role. So that's great. We definitely can see that. So thanks for joining us. It would be great to keep in touch.
Thank you.
And thanks, sure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank
We'll meet again in probably next week, I think. So yeah, thank you, Janani.
Thank
It's
you,
been a
Edgar.
pleasure.
Thank you, Edgar and Gabriela, for providing me this opportunity, because this is my first tech talk, and I feel very comfortable talking about my experiences. I think it'll be helpful for many of us, many of them who have joined this session. Hope I was helpful, and I also would like to thank my great leaders under whom I worked so far. They have been motivating, encouraging me, and providing me the right feedback. And that's how I think I have gained my experience so far. My past leaders under whom I worked, and also my current organization, the leaders under whom I'm working, they are really great, helping me, providing me the right feedback, which is helpful to groom myself, enhance my experience. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm here sharing my experiences with you all. So thank you for
Yeah,
providing me
thank
this.
you. I will be sharing the YouTube link for this event, so you can also share it within your network if you want, or you can rewatch it.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Yes.